Testing positive for HLA-B27, life with ankylosing spondylitis. Amos D. Klassen story. What is HLA-B27, you ask? HLA-B27, also known as human leukocyte antigen B27, is a protein found on white blood cells that are causing infection in the body. Having HLA-B27 puts you at high risk for autoimmune disorders, with ankylosing spondylitis being the most common. 8 out of 100 people have the HLA-B27 gene. That's 8% of the world's population. HLA-B27 can be inherited from a family gene, and some people can carry the HLA-B27 gene and not develop any symptoms of any autoimmune diseases. Most common autoimmune disease disorders connected with HLA-B27 antigens. Ankylosing spondylitis. Arthritis that affects the spine and causes the spine to fuse together like cement and is also the most common. Juvenile arthritis occurs in children. Reactive arthritis, arthritis in the joints, and irritable bowel disease, which affects the large intestines with pain and bloating. And the last one being isolated acute anterior uveitis, which is inflammation of the middle layer of the eye. Now, the one I want to talk about the most with you is ankylosing spondylitis, which is the most common form, the most common disease that is associated with HLA-B27. What is ankylosing spondylitis? It is an inflammatory autoimmune disease that causes his bones and vertebrae of the spine to fuse together like cement, causing people to live in chronic pain. Ankylosing spondylitis affects men more than women. 80% of people with AS develop symptoms by age 30. Signs and symptoms of ankylosing spondylitis. Most common signs and symptoms will occur in early childhood or early adulthood. Chronic pain and stiffness in lower back and hips where spine meets your pelvis. Most common to be worse in the mornings or after periods of no activity. Neck and pain with fatigue. It'll be a pain that gets better than after hot showers. Psoriasis, which is the autoimmune that causes the redness and the flaky skin. Well, HLA-B27 is also an autoimmune disorder. Pain in rib cage when you exhale from the ribs fusing to the spine. Now, with HLA-B27, your spine turns into a metal rod, and where your ribs connect in the back to there, once they get fused together and your ribs do not move well, you have a lot of problems exhaling, and also it affects your diaphragm. Swelling in the arms and legs, redness in the eyes. Treatments for ankylosing spondylitis. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, anti-rheumatic drugs, immune suppressants that have been genetically engineered from living organisms, corticosteroids for acute flares, exercise, and a healthy diet. Now, living with ankylosing spondylitis, this story is Amos Klassen's, which is actually my grandfather. Amos D. Klassen was born in Kinsley, Kansas with 8 siblings in the year 1942. He was a wonderful man, also came from a very strict German heritage. Growing up, I can remember he believed in hard work and to respect your elders. You know, as a teenager, there was a couple times I did mouth off, and he got after me pretty rough, but in a way that he left this earth teaching me a lot of good values. He also had an extremely awesome sense of humor. He was so funny. I can remember so many times joking with him and laughing, and I can remember he built me a turtle cage outside where the turtles would hibernate. With my grandma, we dug out a duck pond. We made sidewalks with our handprints in them and also colored out a bunch of squares so we could take checkers outside and play them on the sidewalks year round. And I can remember picking thistles, waking up at 6 a.m. before the heat. And then to cool off, I'd go swimming at the swimming pool. Alrighty. According to Amos Klassen's doctors, he had one of the worst cases of ankylosing spondylitis that many doctors had ever heard of. He was finally diagnosed in 1978 after already living with an unknown chronic pain. He learned over time from the doctors after being diagnosed that every vertebrae and bone in his spine would soon become fused together completely. And he would have to start staying on top of his posture as perfectly as possible to make sure it fused straight as possible. Growing up with 8 siblings, he got to see his siblings do a lot of things that he couldn't do because of his AS. He also was not able to play football because of the pain and stiffness that he constantly had. And even though back then they had no idea why he hurt, they realized that later on, if he had played football, the slightest injury to his spine could have paralyzed him for life. His mother would talk about how he would complain of back pain even as a little child. And back then, they had no idea what AS was. So for many, many years, Amos had to learn to deal with his pain without even knowing why he hurt. When driving a car, he would roll up his jacket and place it between his lower back and the back of the seat because it would take off the pressure and take the pain away. Years later, after being diagnosed, the doctors told him that just by him doing that, that is what kept his back as straight as it was. He was a man who didn't want to talk about his physical pain or for other people to notice. He was a very tough and driven man who believed that you could not concentrate on 2 things at once. So if he kept busy, he wouldn't even know the pain was there. And when he would go to bed at night, he had to sleep on a firm mattress. And I can remember as a grandchild going into, playing in the bedroom, playing hide and seek, whatever, his side of the bed, because my grandparents actually had 2 separate mattresses, because this is back before they had the Tempur-Pedics and fancy ones. His was very, very firm mattress, and I can remember that. Also, he did not like to do a lot of things in the cold, because having arthritis, the cold made it hurt worse. He was one he'd spend days outside in the having his kids garden or do things to help him, the little things he couldn't do. Amos Klassen's continued journey with AS. Around the last 5 years of his life, doctors told him that he would probably always be taking pain medications to get by. The doctors said the ankylosing spondylitis is a very painful disease to have to live with. He made many sacrifices into adulthood from his disease. The hardest was when a doctor advised him that going to law school would be too hard on his health, even though he had just gotten his bachelor's in criminal justice with intentions of becoming a lawyer. At that time, that's when his loving wife, Sharon Klassen, knew it was time to go back to college to receive her nursing degree to help support the family after Amos's health had declined and he could no longer work. His doctors advised him, and his family even, that he should invest in a hot tub because it would help with his pain. The doctor said, "Now, Amos, for the hot tub to work, it would be best you go inside the hot tub naked. But of course, not when the grandkids are around." Towards the last couple years of his life, the morphine tablets and other medications that he took caused his intestines and bowels to slowly die, and he started dealing with a horrible constipation and blockages. Eventually, his beloved wife, Sharon Klassen, was talked to by the doctors and told her that they either put a colostomy in him or there is no more they could do for him. My grandmother said, "To have a colostomy, my husband would need to look down and bend. He has been through hell dealing with this disease, and this is not the way he would want to continue his life." So, on February 12th of 2007, Amos D. Klassen was laid to rest and was no longer suffering from his ankylosing spondylitis. This is one of his pictures of him while he was in the hospital and had one of his flare-ups and had taken one of his numerous trips from home to there to for the doctors to get the inflammation and all the pain to go away to where he could bend his joints again. But while he was in the hospital, his first grandchild, Brett Goldbeck, who is my brother, had his granddaughter, Regan Goldbeck. And in this picture is him breaking the hospital rules and going from the nursery to my grandfather's hospital room so he could hold his granddaughter for the very first time. There's a lot of story behind this picture. My brother, Brett Wayne Goldbeck, the one handing his daughter to him, actually passed away May 1st of 2011 in a horrible car accident. This picture right here is actually one that means a lot to my family and I, because it shows my brother who's in heaven and my grandpa as well. And this here is my references, and I really, really hope that all of you guys enjoyed my research presentation. It means a lot to me that I got to do this about my grandfather and my family. I would actually like to dedicate it to my grandpa who has passed away, and thank you, and you all have a blessed and wonderful summer.